I've put together five points. 5 points that we can reflect over. 5 principles that we can try and remember. That will be idhnillah help us in regard to our mindset, in regard to our approach towards Ramadan. The first of those, very simple, plan to progress. Number one is what? Plan to progress. There's only going to be 5, inshallah we can memorize them. We said Ramadan is our guest. The guest that doesn't come often. The guest that has a high status. Fine? The guest that we don't take for granted. Fine? And we know the emphasis that Islam places on dealing with guests. من كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليكرم ضيفه. That the one who believes in Allah and His last day, then honor your guest. And that honoring is going to differ depending on the level of that guest. Fine? So how are we going to honor that guest? When a guest comes to the house, what's the first thing you do? You prepare. And so we need to prepare and plan to progress, to accept this guest the way that it deserves. In short, the one who wants to treat that guest and welcome that guest in the best of manners, that welcoming needs to originate from his heart. Ramadan is a month where the issue of the heart, you need to wear your heart on your sleeve. The heart needs to jump out of your chest in Ramadan. Because if you want to welcome something, then that which you utilize to welcome that person or that guest, that should be your focus. The more you work on that thing that you're going to use to welcome that guest, the better the welcoming is going to be. So what are we going to welcome Ramadan with? Not the fridge. Our hearts. Our hearts. So the more we work on our hearts, the more we bring that out, the better our welcoming of that guest is going to be. Bi-iznillahi ta'ala. Obviously the customary approach is the fridge. The customary approach is making sure we're stocked. Fine? But the one who fills his fridge to the brim, he's got every type of food and drink you can think of. He is not going hungry in Ramadan. He hasn't prepared. If he doesn't focus on the thing that he's going to use to welcome that guest, he hasn't prepared in the slightest. And that's why you see certain people, they might fast years on end and there's no actual progress. There's no actual progress. So that thing that we said, which we fast for to gain taqwa, all of those 4 things that we mentioned, that barrier that he's created, depending on how he builds that barrier, it's going to show. He's going to progress. So if you find that a person has not progressed after many years of fasting, there's an issue in the way that he's fasting. Something's wrong. How does a person prepare for Ramadan? A person prepares for Ramadan. The real preparation is what? Is your mushaf ready? How many of us have a mushaf ready for Ramadan? It's ready. We know where, how many of us know where it is? SubhanAllah. Huh? The mushafs come out. Fine? You work on your soul. You work on your tawbah. The masajid are what? Are prepared before Ramadan comes in. That you make yourself aware and acquainted with the rewards that a person can find in Ramadan. Knowledge of Ramadan, knowledge of what's coming. That's the way to what? That's the way to prepare before the month comes in. In my talk yesterday, where we talked about the guidance of the past in regard to Ramadan, how did the past deal with Ramadan? We mentioned something extremely, extremely important. Because they said, we want to learn from the previous generations, the Salaf of this ummah, the companions of the Prophet, the Tabi'een. We want to learn from the righteous scholars of Islam, the four Imam. How did they deal with Ramadan? I said, excellent, but there's a point that we're missing here. That if I'm going to talk about how the previous generations dealt with Ramadan, how they approached Ramadan, then we can't look solely at Ramadan. We can't look solely at Ramadan. It's unfair. Because the previous generations, they lived in Ramadan before Ramadan. And they lived in Ramadan after Ramadan. So if you cut out Ramadan, it's an injustice. The previous generations, to summarize their approach to Ramadan, they had a before and a during and an after. So there's stuff that we need to do before Ramadan, stuff that we do during Ramadan, and stuff that we do after Ramadan. I'll give you an example. We have our 5 daily prayers. They have what we call a sunnah qabliyya, a sunnah that happens before the prayer. And you have a sunnah ba'diyya, and a sunnah that happens after the prayer. And then you have the prayer itself. A person doesn't just go to the masjid and pray. No, there's what he gets ready to, and he makes sure he's wearing the right clothes to pray. He might use the siwak. Fine? He might do the dua on the way to the masjid. Pray his sunnahs, pray tahiyyatul masjid, whatever it might be, and then he prays. That's during now. Has he finished? La, and then after his prayer, he sits. And he remembers Allah Ta'ala. He makes his azkar. Fine? That's his sunnahs, that's his ibadah after, and it's all what? It's all connected. And the better he comes with that which is before, and the better he comes with that which is after, it's very likely that the during, the prayer itself is going to be what? It's going to be of a higher level. And so the previous generations, one of the main focuses of their approach to Ramadan was that they make sincere tawbah before the month has come in. Sincere tawbah. Why? Because we know Ramadan is full of hasanat. It's full of ajr. Excellent. And we, being a son of Adam, we have what? We have mistakes. And we have slip-ups. And we have baggage. Right or wrong? We have baggage. So a person wants to grab as much of that hasanat as he can and put it into his bag. But he's what? He's got baggage already. There's only so much he can take, if any. So a person needs to what? Clean out the baggage so that when the hasanat are there, he can take as much as possible. That's the goal of the tawbah. That's the goal of the tawbah. كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم توبة تجب ما قبلها. Tawbah annihilates, demolishes, removes that which comes before it on the condition that it's done with sincerity. On the condition that it's done with sincerity. And this returns to what we said about wearing our heart on our sleeve in Ramadan. Wallah al-musta'an. So they say that however you prepare for Ramadan, the level of your preparation in regard to Ramadan is going to equal your status, it's going to equal your condition, it's going to equal your actions within Ramadan. If your preparation is up here, your Ramadan is going to be up here. And if your preparation is down here, your Ramadan is going to be also down there. One of the poets said, جاءوا بالنهار وما يفهمون كيف صاموا وشبعوا بالنهار فناموا وما قاموا. That they entered Ramadan. He's talking about Ramadan and how the people approach Ramadan. And he's saying poetry about it. And he said, during the day of Ramadan, they didn't understand how to fast. During the day of Ramadan, they didn't understand how to fast. And when the night of Ramadan came, they what? They were asleep in their beds.